Hi there, and welcome to Design Tab. This is Montague Monroe, and in today's tutorial we will be going over making parallax websites. Parallax is a technique that has been used a lot previously in gaming and other things like that, but in the recent past it has made its way over to web design. Parallax gives designers the ability to become incredibly creative with the web designs that they create. And it allows you to sort of spread your wings and create something very interesting visually. The technical term for parallax is basically it creates an illusion by scrolling different elements at a different speed. So you may have things in the foreground scrolling fast and things in the background scrolling slower. And this creates an illusion of a three-dimensional space on a 2D object. So let's move right in and take a look at how we're going to go about creating our new Parallax website. The first thing I want to do is open up our terminal, and let's go into our sites directory, and let's create a new directory called Para for Parallax. And let's cd into our para directory. Once we're inside our para directory, what we're going to want to do is open the directory in our default text editor. Okay, so here we are inside of our Parallax website project. What I'm going to want to do first is to create an index file and 3 folders. So let's create a file quickly and save this inside our para, and we want to save it as index.html. That's the first one down. Now we're going to want 3 folders. The first one will be CSS. The second will be images. And the final one will be JavaScript, where we're going to be holding all of our JavaScript libraries. Okay, after this, we are going to want to quickly put some standard HTML into our index file. It's just HTML, head, title tags, body. No very complicated things yet. So we'll save that and let's move along. The next thing we're going to want to do is to move 3 JavaScript plugins into our JS folder. These JavaScript plugins will handle different things with our website and our parallax effect. The first one is going to be jquery.stellar.js. Stellar.js allows you very easily to use its kit to create parallax scrolling effects on your elements. The next one will be waypoints. Waypoints.js allows you to fire off certain functions and make things happen when you scroll down to a certain point of the page. We're going to be using this to set up buttons, for instance, that can scroll down to the next slide in our parallax page rather than just scrolling down. Also, we can use it to highlight what section is active on our navigation as we scroll along the page. The last one we're going to be doing is Jquery Easing, and this will just create a nice fluid motion when we click the buttons as it progresses through the slides. So let's get started and put these into our project. I have them all already downloaded, but with a simple Google search you should have no problem finding and downloading them. They're all free and easily findable. So without further ado, I'm going to go into my resources, Jquery Plugins, and let's have a look-see for these. The first one is waypoints, so we'll copy this and pop it into our resources, our sites, down into our JavaScript folder. Paste. So that's the first one down. Now we also want Stellar. Let's look for Stellar. Here we go. jQuery.stellar, and let's copy that and go into our sites. And on second thought, I'm going to include the link to all of the downloads for these JavaScript libraries in the description of this video. So if you just have a look at that, you'll find a quick link to finding what you need. Here we go. And now let's get our final one, which I believe should be easing. It shouldn't be too hard to find. Here we go, Jquery.easing. So let's copy this last one in. Let's move this off our page quickly. And pop this into our website. Perfect. So now we have our 3 scripts available. I also want to link them in on our index page. But just before we do that, we also want one more JavaScript file in our folder, and this is our own custom one. So we're just going to go into there and save it as main.js, just so we have some stuff to put in ourselves. So underneath the title tag, let's put in scripts. We want the source to be JavaScript. And okay, so the first one I'm going to put in is going to be Stella, followed by waypoints, then easing, and finally our main.js. So let's pop these in now. jQuery.stella.min.js. And that's our first one. We want another one here. Actually, while we're here, we might as well just copy this whole line and there we go, and we can just edit these paths right here. So now we want waypoints, whoops, not waypoints, waypoints.js, and we also are going to want to use easing, jQuery.easing.1.3.js, and the last one is just going to be our main.js file. Alrighty, so that's that done. Before we do all of this, we're going to want to use one more thing, and this is going to be our Jquery plugin, of course. So we'll take this opportunity to use the Jquery CDN, and we'll go to, I know this one, and this will just pull the Jquery library from the internet into our project. .com/jQuery 2.0.3.min.js. Excellent, that should be fine. So what we'll do now is we'll open up our website into our browser and make sure that all of those scripts have gone through. So localhost, we'll just go to our where we hold our files, and it should be under Para. Perfect. Let's have a look into our Chrome Developer Tools and make sure everything worked okay. Alright, we seem to be in luck. Everything has gone through nicely. Alrighty, now we're going to want to create a style sheet so we can style some of our elements. So inside of our CSS folder, let's create a new file and save it as style.scss. .scss is a Sass file sheet. You can use CSS instead if you do not have Sass installed. If you're interested in learning about Sass, because it is an amazing thing to use, I suggest checking out our previous tutorial on using Sass. But I'm going to skip over that for this tutorial and just jump straight in. Alrighty, so now we have our style.scss. We're going to want to include it into our project. So let's create a link, and we want to go to css/style.css. I'll also take this opportunity to open up our Finder and get Para and put it into CodeKit. CodeKit just automatically refreshes my page when I save my pages, and it also automatically updates my SAS files for me and compiles them into CSS. So I'm just going to pop him in there quickly. Perfect. And we will compile this. And you'll see I now have my style.css right here, which we can link in our HTML. Perfect. Alrighty. Now inside the images folder, we're going to want to set up some more folders. One folder for each slide. For this tutorial, we're going to be creating 4 slides. So I will just quickly make 4 folders in here. I'll go slide 2, slide 3, and slide 4. Alright, while we're here, we're also going to want 2 more images, one for the arrow, which will be on our buttons to go down to the next slide, and a logo for us to use. I just have these pre-made quickly in another folder, and I will just copy and paste these straight in now. There we go. So now we have pretty much everything we need for our initial setup. Alrighty. Now we're going to want to add Twitter Bootstrap to our file. Twitter Bootstrap was covered in a previous tutorial. It's basically a responsive grid system and rapid prototyping CSS engine. And it basically just allows us to make things look nice. So we'll do that, we'll add that in so that our Parallax website is also responsive, which is very important. So first thing we'll do is jump onto here and we'll go to Bootstrap CDN, because we'll be using a CDN for this, just so we don't need to download the files and manually put them into our project. We'll get the CSS, copy this, and pop it above our style.css. This is so that our styles overwrite Bootstrap's. Perfect. And we're also going to want the JavaScript CDN, and we'll just copy this, and the JavaScript one we're going to put right before the end of the body. Perfect. Alright, so now we can get started on our website and really dig in and make something happen. Before this, it was mainly just getting everything ready to start work. So what do we want first? I say let's go for a navigation first. So let's create ourselves a navigation bar along the top. Let's make it stick to the top as we scroll down the page. Alrighty. So inside our body, we're going to want a nav element, and inside that we're going to want a unordered list, and we'll give it a class of navigation. Alrighty, and then we'll have our list items. So we want li, and inside here we will give it a data slide of 1. Now I'll explain what data slide does properly later, but just know for now that this basically lets you, once you put the JavaScript in there, it allows you to, when you click it, it will take you to the first data slide, which will be our first slide. And then if you click another one, it'll take you there. It'll just allow you to easily navigate through your slides using the navigation. So let's create a link. Just put it to nowhere, and we will name it slide 1. And we will copy this, and we'll make 4 of them for each slide. And we will say slide 2. And I'm using the control function here to update them both at the same time. So just notice that you need to change here in the data slide and in the actual text. 4, and I've actually messed this one up. So 3. There we go. Now we have our navigation completed and ready in our index.html. You can see it shows up here. Alrighty. So the next thing we're going to want to do is style our navigation and make it look nice. So what we're going to do is go over to our style.scss and let's start working through some styles. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is style the HTML and body tags. Give it a width of 100% and a height of 100%. This will just make sure that it fills the browser. We're going to want padding 0 and margin 0. This will just make sure that there's no unneeded padding or margin messing around with our elements. Perfect. So let's get started on our navigation. So we've given it a class of navigation and we can access it from here in our style sheet. So first thing we want is padding 0 and margin 0. We're also going to want to give it a background. So I say we'll just give it a nice background, chromy grey. We want to give it a fixed position. And this basically says that as we scroll down the page, it will always stay in the top, or where it is. So we're going to say we want it right up against the top, 0 pixels away from the top. We'll give it a z index of 999. This just makes sure that as we're going through our slides, it'll always be on top of any other layer. And we're going to want to give it a width of 100% because we want it to scroll all the way across our page. Now we're going to style the list items inside. So first of all, we're going to give it a display of inline block. This will just make sure that all of them are horizontal and next to each other. Then we'll give it a nice little padding, 5 pixels on the top and the bottom, and 10 pixels on the side. Now, considering that they're all links inside of our navigation, let's style up the links a little bit. Let's give it a color of E1, which is a light grey, and let's get rid of that underline that's on there using our text decoration none. This will just make sure it's straight text. Last thing we want to do is give it a hover effect. So we'll say when it's being hovered over, we'll give it a new color, and we're going to use a Sass function called lighten here. And it takes 2 arguments. The first one is a color. We're going to use the same color we have normally here, and we're going to say lighten this color by 20% when it's hovered over. Alrighty. Last thing we want is an active, because when we're on a slide, we want to let them know that they're on that slide. And we'll say we'll give it a background color of we'll just say we'll actually lighten the normal background color. Use more functions because they're nice. So we'll get our 333, which is our background color of our navigation, and lighten it by 20% again. Alrighty, so let's take a look and see how that's going. If we go into Google Chrome, you'll see we now have our nice little navigation bar along the top. If you hover over them, they lighten up a little bit, and if any of them were to have an active class, which we're going to be doing through JavaScript, the actual background itself will light up a little bit. Okay then. Now we're going to want to create our slides. So let's go over into our text editor and go into index.html. Inside our HTML, we're going to want to go below the navbar and create ourselves a new div with the class of main. So we'll say div and say class is main, and this will hold all of our new slides. So to create the slides, we're going to be using a lot more data slide variables, like up here. And this basically will allow jQuery to take the number and use it to navigate around nicely. Alright, so we'll say div, and we'll give it a class of slide and an ID of slide1. That's fairly good. We'll say data slide, because we want to be able to link up these list items with our slides. So data slide 1, and we're also going to want to use another one. This is just for Stella, and this is to let Stella know at what speed do you want the background to move at. So we'll say data Stella background ratio, and we'll say 0.5. So this basically says at 0 it will not move at all. At 1 it will, at 1 it will not move at all. 0 it will move. Okay, sorry. At 0 it won't move at all. At 1 it will scroll at normal speed, just like anything else you were scrolling along the page. And 2, it will move double speed. So 0.5 will make the background scroll at half the speed you are scrolling down the page. If that doesn't make sense, you'll see the effect shortly. Okay then. Now inside this, we're going to want another div, and we'll give this a class of container. And this is just basically tells Bootstrap that we want to create a nice little container in here and fill it with some responsive elements. So we'll say div, and we'll say class of row. Perfect. And inside this we're going to put our last two divs. We'll say div with a class of colMD6. This is just saying, okay Bootstrap, we want one of my keys is messing up a little bit. There we go. Say, okay Bootstrap, we want a column here that's 6 columns wide, which is half our page, and we're going to make 2 of these. Both will be 6, and they'll add up to 12, and this will make them go side by side like a 2-column grid. This is explained more in our previous tutorial on Bootstrap. If you don't fully understand Bootstrap and you want to learn about it and why things work the way they do, I suggest you check out our tutorial on Bootstrap. But for now, to save a little bit of time, we will just move along. So we want to give it another class, which is slide1 logo, because this is where we're going to be putting our logo, and we want a couple of separate styles just for this div. Perfect. Alright. Now inside here, we're going to want to create an image, I think. Yes. So we'll go image, and source will be image / let's have a look in here, logo.png. There we go. And we also want to give it a class of main image, I think, just so we can target the image. And now that we've completed that, we're also going to want to create another div, and we'll give it the same class, which is colMD6, and that should be all for this one, because we don't need to give it any particular styling other than that. And we'll create a h1 tag in there saying, welcome to my my new Parallax website. Perfect. Alrighty, so last but not least, right before the end of the slide, we're going to want to create another little button. So we'll say A, and we'll get rid of href because this is just a button that's going to be targeted by jQuery. And this is where we're going to put our little down arrow button so that they can click it and move down to the next slide. So we'll say A class button, and we'll say data slide is equal to 2, and we'll give it, just make sure, just in case, that the title is equal to nothing. Okay, so the reason why we put data slide 2 here, when this is actually data slide 1, is because we want to let people know that when they click this button, we want to go to data slide 2, which is the next one down. Alright, so now that we've got our first slide done, we can pretty much just copy and paste and create our next 3 slides. Except with these ones, I'm going to be a little bit less, we're not going to put as much content in there, because once you understand how to put content in the first one, it'll be very, very easy to copy and paste over the code and edit it and do content in the rest. So we're going to get rid of this content div completely and just keep our buttons. Alright, so we'll say data slide 2, and this is data slide 2. Keep the background ratio, and we'll say on the button we want to go to data slide 3. Make sense? We'll do the same again here. And this one is data slide 3, and we want to go to data slide 4. And inside data slide 4, we're going to get rid of everything, because we don't need a button, because we're on the last data slide, and we're not going to have any content in there. In this one, I'm going to be putting a nice background image. So, now let's get straight onto styling these so that they look nice. Alrighty. Yes. Let's go into our style.css. And the first thing we're going to want to do is to make sure that everything, with our fixed header, things are going to accidentally slip underneath it at the top. So we want to create a little bit of a margin along the top, just so that things aren't going underneath our header unless they have to. Unless we're scrolling down the page and we don't want to see them anymore. Alright, so we'll target our main, and this is our overall big div that we held all of our slides in. We'll say margin top 30 pixels. There we go, easy as that. Now we're going to want to make a slide styles, and this is basically, this will be targeted in every single slide because they all have the class slide. So this is going to be some general styles for everything. So what we're going to want to do is say background attachment and fixed. This will basically say that we want our backgrounds inside of these divs to be fixed, and you'll see the effect of this shortly. This is, yeah, it's a little bit hard to understand at the moment, but I'll make sure to point it out when we see the effect. Alright, next up is width. We want all of our divs to be 100% of the width and the height. This will make sure that the slides will always take up your whole screen. You won't have a little bit of the next slide poking in through the bottom or something like that. Slides are supposed to be full screen. We'll give it a position of relative, and we'll give it a nice generous padding of 30 pixels. There we go, that's our slide done. And now we're going to want to move over to our buttons. So, let's have a look-see here. Well, first of all, we want to display as block, because, you know, we want it to be a block element, not a link, because there's no text. We want to give it a width of about 50 pixels, height of about the same. Yeah, we'll go with the same. Nice little box at the bottom. Now we want to give it a position of absolute because it is inside the relative element, and we'll say bottom 25 pixels. This will say we want it 25 pixels off the bottom of the slide, and we'll say left 50% because we want it in the middle. Alrighty, and we'll say margin left. We'll say negative 25 pixels. Now the reason for this is because if we push it 50% to the left using this line, because it's 50 pixels wide, it will go an extra 50 pixels to the right of the screen. So we're going to bring it back halfway by 25 pixels, which is exactly half the box, and this will just slide it back into the center. Alrighty, so that's that bit. Now we're going to want to add our background, and background image, and we'll say URL to our image file, and then our arrow.png. That'll give it a nice little background image with our arrow, and we'll say background size 50 pixels by 50 pixels. This will just make sure that the background image has been resized to fit our little button. And finally we'll say background repeat will be no repeat. There we go. Alrighty, let's just have a little look at what's happened so far. We've done a lot of code here. So this is what we have now. So these are all of our slides. You'll see we have a little button at the bottom. We have our thing here, and we might want to bring this down a little bit more, this logo, but essentially this whole area here is one slide. The next one down is the second slide, third slide, and our fourth slide. You'll see the magic happen when we put in our proper JavaScript, but until then we'll just have to give it a little look. Alrighty, let me go into here, and I want to bring this down just a little bit more. What would be the best way to do that? Let's just bring this down to 50. Nope, that's not what we want. I'll keep recording for this because if you ever run into the same problem, the best way to work out problems like this is to see people do it live, and they can sort of show how it's done. We probably want let me just take a quick look at this. Have a look in our developer tools. Okay, so the problem seems to be that it is still not doing the padding we want on the main container. We want a margin top on the main container of 30 pixels, but for some reason it's not listening to us. And the reason for that is I forgot an L in the class. Of course, it's always little things like that. But once you work your way back, like I did there, go through the developer tools, see what the problem is, go to the code and see what's going wrong, you can usually pick up on the problem. And there we go, you can see it's sitting in there nicely now. Alright, so let's move along. There's still a little bit more we need to do to get this working the way we want. Alright, so we've added our slide and button styling, but now we're going to want to add styles for our individual things. And what we're going to do for that is, well, first of all, I want to put a couple of images into my slide folders so that we can use them as backgrounds for our slide. So the first one I want to do is this one here. This will be the one for our first. It's just a nice little texture that we can use to make our background look nice for our first slide. And I'll paste that in there. Next up, we want our second one. And we will paste that in here. This should be in slide 2, I believe. And if I go into the last one, and I will copy this one here and put it into our slide 4. Alright, so now we have our background images for our slides. Let's go ahead and pop these in where they need to go. So for the first one, we'll say slide 1, and this is targeting the IDs, which they all have their specific IDs. Alright, we'll say background image, whoops, and we'll give it a URL, and we want slide 1, and then bg.png. And we also want to style the logo a little bit, I think. So let's go slide 1 logo. And remember we added in this class earlier, just to make sure. And we'll say text align center. Let's take a little look at what we got there. So this has moved the logo a little bit closer to our text. And we've also got this nice sort of grainy cream wall background here, which looks quite nice. Alright, it may be very hard to see on this video, but if you look very closely as I scroll, the background is not really moving. So what we want to do there is go into our index.html, and because this is not an image, it's more of a texture, let's make the background ratio to 1, just so it's more sort of static as we scroll. Alrighty. Now, moving along, we are going to want to do these styles for our second slide. So, slide 2. This one's going to be a little bit more complicated because we're going to put a background image in on this one. So first of all, like before, we will create our background image, and we'll go into our images folder, and then slide 2, and then bg dot, this one's a JPEG. Inside here, we're also going to want to add a couple of little things to make sure that the size of the image always fits the way we want it. So we'll say WebKit background size is cover, and then we want dash Mozilla or Moz background size cover as well, and then we want our I believe this is for Safari maybe? Anyway, background size cover, and then last but not least we want our normal background size cover. There we go. And we also want to give it a z-index just to make sure it sits the way we want it. So we'll get z-index and we'll say 9. So if I refresh the page here, you can see the effect already starting to work. Now, earlier when I told you I would show you the effect of the background attachment fixed and also our parallax scrolling effect, this is what I was talking about. You can see as we scroll down, not only is the picture sort of more revealed, but it's also it gives the illusion of being behind the other slides, almost like looking into a little bit of like a 3D landscape. And this is a very, very simple showcase of the effect. Some websites, if you go and Google them, have some absolutely amazing examples of things you can do by using this effect. But we're just going to keep it simple and learn the fundamentals. Alright, so that's the effect we were looking for. Now, the next thing we're going to want to do is start on our third slide. So, without further ado, slide 3. And we'll give this just a background color of B6C10B. This is like a sort of a greenish sort of color. And last but not least, we're going to do our final slide. And for the final slide, we're just going to do another background image. Just, so it goes a little bit like texture, background image, color, background image. So here's our slide 4, and we'll say, save this a little bit of time here, and I will just copy this all and pop it in here, and we'll change our thing to slide 4, and then it should be background.jpg. Perfect. We have our covers and our z-index. Oh no, we have a problem. And the problem is background color. We've forgotten our double colon here. There we go. Now it's working. So refresh the page. So we scroll down, we have our first image looking nice. Scroll down, we have our third slide here, nice and green. And then we scroll down and it appears that the image we want is not working on this one. Let's have a look at the problem. So we have our background.jpg here, inside our slide 4 folder, inside of our images folder. So URL image slide 4 bg.jpg. Let's try bumping up this a little bit. Nope. Let's inspect our elements and go to our resources, see if anything's not working the way we want it to. It appears that our last one might not be showing up the way we wanted it to. Image, slide 4. I'm not actually too sure why that's not working. Slide 4 is the thing, I believe. There we go, we always come across it in the end. Slide 4. And refresh the page. And now you'll see we have our final one. Alright, so what's the last thing we want to do? We can easily sort of scroll through here and see all of our static content looking very nice, all of our sort of parallaxy effects going. And now we want to add a little bit of movement in here. We want to be able to click along here and go to any slide we like. We want the slides to light up when we're on that slide. And we also want to be able to click the down button to go to the next slide. To do that, we're going to need to do up some jQuery. So, let's get started and let's do ourselves up some jQuery. Okay, now that we're inside our main.js and ready to do our JavaScript, we are going to put a little bit of code in here just to allow things to work out the way we like. Now, the code I'm going to put in here, I'll just copy and paste this in, and I'm also going to put it into the description on this video so that you can easily copy and paste it in yourself. This code has been nicely provided for free by NetShoots, and this basically just is a function that takes all three of our plugins and sets up a little bit of the functionality for ourselves. Paste this in here. Alrighty, so we have a couple of errors here, I think. Alright, here we go. So, I'm not really going to go into too much detail on what this particular code here does, but it's heavily commented. You can say, basically we initialize it, we just get a couple of variables set up, we do our waypoints. This basically just makes our navigation bar update the active class on the elements depending on where along we are scrolled. This one here just sets up the scroll function, so it doesn't detect the first slide. So what we want to do is just put that in to make sure it does remove it. Here, this just creates a function, and it basically says when you click the button, scroll down to that slide and use the easing to do it. Perfect. Alright, and this is just for the navigation links. We just want to make sure that it scrolls to the correct one. So let's take a look at what all this mumbo jumbo does. If we go into here, first of all, you should notice that slide 1 is now lit up. This basically means slide 1 is active. As we scroll down, or actually, if we click the button here, you'll see it slowly and smoothly slides us down to the second slide. And you'll also see that slide 2 and slide 1 is active. That's because the more you go down, the more the slides go. Alright, so if we can sort of click our buttons, go down, scroll through the content, we have our nice parallax effect, and there we go. So that's pretty much how to make the bare basic parallax effect on a website. We've also had a look at using stellar.js, waypoints.js, and Jquery Easing in order to create a nicely sort of navigatable parallax website. We've taken a look at how to put Bootstrap into a website and make it into a responsive, using a responsive grid. And we've just taken a look at a couple of little things like putting in our background images and making them scroll slower than the background. This has been quite a long tutorial at this point, so I will more than likely make another one in the future. Goes into a little bit more detail about Parallax, but I will likely take it into smaller chunks. Alright guys, if you are interested in learning more about web design or just general design, feel free to stop by designtab.me and come say hi. We're a small community, but we're slowly building up our database of tutorials, and we're just generally friendly people. If you are interested in learning about stuff like stellar.js and Parallax websites, I suggest that you take the time to go and check out NetTuts. They have some incredibly good tutorials on creating different versions and different techniques for Parallax websites. Alright guys, so without further ado, I will catch you next time. Have a nice day.